legacy of World War II, meaning what was left over after World War II ended. Let's look at a cause first. The overall cause was that the United States and the Allies achieved victory in Europe and in the Pacific. There were two effects to this. First effect is that there was a large impact on the United States. Due to rationing, Americans were able to save money, which they would spend after the war. Also, millions of Americans had jobs that they didn't during the Great Depression. So all of these were economic improvements for the United States. As far as the position of the United States in the world, America became a global superpower as it emerged from the war with little destruction and no rebuilding. The United States was also the only nation to possess an atomic bomb or atomic weapon at that time. In regard to military spending, the American government spent more money on the military than on Social Security or national health care. The government issued contracts to big businesses to produce weapons and machinery for the nation's defense. So a lot of money went into building up our military during World War II. There was also a political shift in the United States. Most Americans, or more Americans, supported Republicans in office due to three major issues. The national government becoming too powerful was one, the economy controlled by the government, and also the spread of communism. So before the end of World War II, we had a lot of democratic government, or democratic presidents. One, for example, Franklin Roosevelt, was elected 4 times and died in his 4th term. So the American people were ready for a Republican to be in office. There was also still discrimination. Racial tensions grew between whites and minorities. Mexican Americans faced discrimination in California, as you briefly learned about the Zoot Suite riots. And Japanese Americans struggled to rebuild their lives after being in internment camps during World War II. The GI Bill provided benefits to returning World War II veterans, such as low-cost mortgages to buy homes, loans to start businesses or farms, and money to go to college. So all of these benefited servicemen and women and gave them the rights that they deserved from fighting in World War II. Now, besides a large effect on the United States, World War II also left a very large effect on the world. First, in regard to the cost of the war, and by cost I mean lives, an estimated 57 million lives were lost. 400,000 American soldiers were killed, 22 million Soviet civilians, and 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. We also had war crime trials after World War II was over, something that we didn't necessarily have after a war until this point in time. 21 Nazi officials were tried in Nuremberg, Germany, for crimes against peace and against human rights for their actions during the Holocaust. 25 Japanese officials were tried in Tokyo, Japan, for war crimes. These trials ended up demonstrating that just following orders was not an acceptable defense for their actions. It was said that instead of just saying they followed orders, they should have had some type of moral compass that told them this is wrong and I'm not going to do it. But instead, they blamed it on following orders and were indeed punished after the fact. The United Nations was also created after World War II. The international organization that was created in response to the failure of the League of Nations. So the United Nations was similar to the League of Nations. However, it had a lot more involvement and had a lot more organization than the League of Nations seemed to do. The United States does decide to join the United Nations because it cannot help achieve world peace by following isolationism anymore. Okay, the United States tried that, and world peace did not happen. So the United States decided that we did need to get involved with the United Nations. And it is an organization that is still around today. After World War II, the Cold War begins to occur pretty close to after the end of World War II. The United States and the Soviet Union become the two biggest global superpowers and try to spread their forms of ideas throughout the world. United States ideas being democracy and capitalism, the Soviet Union being communism. So now that you've learned about the legacy of World War II and what occurred after the end of the fighting in both Europe and the Pacific, you'll be beginning a World War II project to bring together everything that you've learned throughout this unit.